Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Saturday, September 27th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. In Riverside, expect a high of 76.7 degrees today and a low of 65.9 degrees, so it's a comfortable day for outdoor plans. But keep a light layer handy as evenings cool off. Coming up on the show, we'll break down the Supreme Court's decision allowing President Trump to halt billions in foreign aid funding and examine just how severe California's housing crisis has become, from skyrocketing prices to the growing number of people affected. We'll also cover a few other key developments making headlines today. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. In a major decision that's freezing more than just the weather ahead of fall, the Supreme Court has sided with the Trump administration, upholding their hold on nearly $5 billion in foreign aid. This could spell trouble for global programs worldwide, and with just 3 days until the fiscal year ends on September 30th, time is ticking like a budget bomb. Joining me now to unpack this purse-string power play is our Washington correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, walk us through what happened yesterday at the High Court.
Thanks, Grace. You're right, this ruling is a real chill on international giving. According to reporting from ABC News, the Associated Press, and the Washington Post, the Supreme Court issued an unsigned emergency order on September 26th, indefinitely extending a block on a lower court ruling. That lets President Trump's team keep withholding $4.9 billion in congressionally approved foreign aid funds. It's a big win for executive authority, especially in foreign affairs, and it came without any oral arguments or a full review, aligning with the court's conservative majority.
Unsigned order, no arguments. That sounds like the court's shadow docket in action. The 3 liberal justices weren't happy, right? And what exactly is this pocket rescission maneuver that's got everyone up in arms?
Spot on, Grace. It's like a fiscal sleight of hand. Justice Elena Kagan, joined by Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, dissented sharply, warning it, quote, permanently prevents these funds from reaching their intended recipients, end quote, due to the looming fiscal deadline. They called it a dangerous erosion of Congress's power of the purse, a constitutional principle that keeps spending in lawmakers' hands. As for the pocket rescission, NPR and CBS News detail how Trump invoked it in a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson on August 28th, just weeks before the end. It's a tactic under the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which requires presidents to notify Congress of fund cancellations and gives them 45 days to approve or reject. But timing it so late means the window won't close before the funds lapse on September 30th, effectively canceling them without a vote. Trump called the spending wasteful, woke, and against American values, targeting programs on climate, diversity, and global health.
Fascinating how history echoes here, like a Nixon rerun. Tell me more about the legal battle that led to this, starting from the district court.
Absolutely, it's got shades of Watergate-era impoundments that birthed the ICA to rein in presidents. The saga kicked off in late August in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, where groups like the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition sued. Judge Amir Ali, a Biden appointee, ruled on September 5 that the hold was likely illegal under the ICA and the Constitution's Appropriations Clause. He ordered the funds obligated right away, stressing separation of powers, because if executives can just pocket money, it thumbs Congress's nose. The D.C. Circuit let the suit proceed but didn't fully back the order, so the Justice Department raced to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts issued a temporary stay on September 9, and yesterday's 6-3 decision along ideological lines, with conservatives like Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Roberts prevailing, said the administration showed enough that private suits might not fly under the ICA, and foreign policy harms outweighed aid delays.
6-3 split, no surprise there. Now breaking down the bucks, what programs are on the chopping block and why should viewers care about the humanitarian ripple effects?
The $4.9 billion hit State Department and USAID accounts, mostly one-year funds expiring in 3 days per The Guardian and DivX. Breakdown includes $3.2 billion in USAID's development assistance for poverty, education, food security, gender equity, and climate resilience in places like Colombia, Honduras, Nigeria, Afghanistan, Mexico, and Indonesia. Think microinsurance for farmers battling disasters, or biodiversity in West Africa. Then 520 million to 900 million for UN contributions on peacekeeping and health. 326 million to 838 million for peacekeeping ops against rivals like China and Russia, and 322 million for the Democracy Fund on anti-corruption abroad. Other pots cover disaster aid, refugee help, economic support, and global health, like PEPFAR for HIV, which has saved millions of lives. Aid groups via Al Jazeera and Common Dreams warn of disruptions in 120 countries, potentially 14 million preventable deaths by 2030, halted HIV treatments, food shortages in starving regions, stalled disaster response in Ukraine and Honduras, and setbacks in anti-torture and migration aid. Oxfam America notes threats to women's health and slavery prevention. As the top U.S. donor, this dents our soft power and alliances.
Wow, from global health heroes to potential heartbreaks, that's a heavy hit. Any ways to thaw this before the deadline? Or is it all iced over?
Slim chances, Grace, but Congress could pass a continuing resolution or rider to extend funds, as Democrats are pushing per time and indivisible. The GAO might sue, but timelines are tight. SCOTUS blog and Bloomberg Law see this as Trump testing boundaries, like with USAID layoffs under Marco Rubio. Critics like Public Citizen's Nick Sansone tell Courthouse News Service it's eroding powers with grave impacts, though it barely nicks the deficit.
Thanks for that deep dive, Ethan, keeping us ahead of the fiscal freeze. We'll have more on this in our second story after the break. Good morning, folks. As we wrap up our morning headlines with Story 2 of 2, let's turn to California's ongoing housing crisis, a puzzle that's as tough to solve as it is to count. Joining me now from the studio is our housing policy expert, Chloe. Chloe, this shortage seems like it's everywhere, but the numbers are all over the map. What's the latest on just how big this problem really is?
That's right, Grace. California's housing shortage is no small potatoes. It's a real estate riddle that's leaving families in a bind. According to a key 2024 article from CalMatters by reporter Ben Christopher, titled, "How Bad is California's Housing Shortage?" It depends on who's doing the counting. The estimates swing wildly from as few as 56,000 units to a whopping 3.5 million. CalMatters, a nonprofit, nonpartisan news organization focused on state government and policy, highlights how experts agree on the crisis but clash on the scale, thanks to different ways of measuring what counts as a shortage.
3.5 million? That's a house hunt from here to the moon. Break down some of these estimates for us, Chloe, starting with the lower ones. Who's coming up with that 56,000 figure?
Sure, Grace. At the low end, a summer 2025 report from economists at Moody's Analytics, covered in depth by LAist, Southern California's NPR affiliate, puts the statewide shortage at just 56,000 units. This comes from a national look at about 2 million missing units across the United States, figuring in homes needed to boost vacancy rates to a healthy 5 to 7% and cover pent-up demand, like young adults stuck living with parents because they can't afford their own place. But even Moody's admits this is probably an underestimate for California, since state data gaps left out things like overcrowding or historical underbuilding. It's like a mechanic saying your car only needs a quart of brake fluid when it might guzzle gallons. It doesn't capture the full fix needed.
Pent-up demand sounds frustrating. And those mid-range numbers, how do they stack up?
Moving to the hundreds of thousands, the nonprofit Up for Growth estimated 840,000 units short in their 2024 report, cited in both CalMatters and LAist. That's similar to Freddie Mac's 820,000 figure, both looking at how population growth, job creation, and a modest vacancy target stack against our current 14 million units statewide. These focus on underproduction over decades to keep prices stable, but they don't zoom in on folks who need affordable options.
Affordable is the key word here. What about for lower-income families?
Exactly, Grace. The California Housing Partnership's 2025 report, published in March and available on their site chpc.net, flags a 1.3 million unit deficit just for very low and extremely low income households, those earning below 50% or 30% of the area median income. Using census data, it shows over 2 million such households struggling, with only units they can afford at under 30% of income. Only 25% of renter resources are permanent, compared to 97% for homeowners, pointing to policy biases. Developers can't profit without subsidies because costs outpace what low earners can pay. It's a market failure in action.
Those higher estimates sound alarming. What's the official line from the state?
On the high end, the Legislative Analyst's Office back in 2015 calculated 2.7 million units needed in major metros over 3 decades to match national cost trends as detailed in CalMatters. McKinsey's 2016 report, which shaped Governor Newsom's campaign, pegged it at 3.5 million by 2025, including job growth and a vacancy buffer against bidding wars. And Wikipedia's April 2025 update still notes about 3 million short this year. But the big official benchmark is from the California Department of Housing and Community Development's Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. For the 6th cycle covering 2021 to 2029, HCD set a statewide target of more than 2.5 million units total, with over 1 million for lower income, per their February 2025 documents on ca.gov. That's broken down by income levels, factoring household formation, job housing balance, and revised rental vacancy rates of 5 to 8%.
Why such a spread in numbers? Is it just guesswork?
It's messy data and judgment calls, as CalMatters and LAist explain. Definitions vary. Some, like Moody's, aim for overall market health with 5% rental vacancies, while affordable-focused ones like the Housing Partnership target subsidized needs. Data sources differ too, from census surveys to Department of Finance projections, and California's local markets are hyperlocal, with Bay Area squeezes versus Central Valley surpluses. A 2022 California State Auditor report, covered in 2025 by Voice of OC and Davis Vanguard, slammed HCD's RHNA as inaccurate, saying it ignored factors like disaster-displaced units and inflated targets with a 5% vacancy assumption, adding over 22,000 units to Sacramento County's needs alone. The Embarcadero Institute's analysis on CaliforniacityNews.org even suggested up to 900,000 unit overcounts from double counting. But HCD's beefed up for 2025, with Senate Bill 7 shortening reviews, mandating low-income shares, and tweaking vacancies to 6 to 8% for rentals and 1.3 to 2% for ownership in the 7th cycle, scoping underway now.
Beyond the math, what policies are making this worse?
Policy barriers amp it up, per 2025 reports from the California Chamber of Commerce and National Low-Income Housing Coalition on NLIHC.org. The California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, lets lawsuits stall projects for years, hiking costs 20 to 30%. Exclusionary zoning blocks multifamily homes, and rules like prevailing wages add $40,000 to $80,000 per unit, according to the Center for Jobs and the Economy. Funding favors homeowners 2 to 1 over renters, pushing high-end builds. But 2025 laws now shield infill projects from CEQA suits and allow denser transit-oriented development. An Enterprise Community Partners report in March notes 44,723 affordable units stalled by funding gaps, not lack of demand.
So, is there any light at the end of this tunnel, Chloe? What's the path forward?
A consensus is building as LAist, CalMatters, UC Davis, and Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies note in 2025. It's a massive shortage needing urgent supply boosts, numbers aside. HCD's RHNA is the guide, blending approaches for actionable plans. With a new housing homelessness agency launching in July 2026, about 9 months from now, and the 7th RHNA stressing low-income mandates, progress is possible if barriers fall. As CalMatters warns, without better counting, we're just building castles in the air.
Castles in the air indeed, Chloe. Thanks for unpacking this housing headache for us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. Critics say a proposed finder's fee for the federal government is a shakedown as a consortium of American investors moves to take over TikTok's U.S. operations. Reports say Oracle and Silver Lake, joined by tech titan Larry Ellison and the Murdochs, have agreed to pay low billions to Washington as part of a deal compelled by national security law and advanced by executive order. The plan would spin up a new U.S. entity valued at about $14 billion, with ByteDance retaining just under a 20% minority stake and a 120-day clock to close. Supporters frame the fee as the cost of cutting through the red tape. Detractors hear a cash register at the intersection of policy and platform. Either way, it's a bite-back moment that could set a costly code precedent. America's soybean belt is feeling more like a gut punch. China has halted purchases, turning a trade tiff into a tariff rift. With total duties on U.S. soybeans hitting roughly 34%, American beans are suddenly the pricey option compared with Brazil and Argentina. The fall harvest is rolling in, but orders aren't. Industry trackers report no new crop export deals to China for the 2025-2026 marketing year. After 4 rounds of talks from May through September, there's still no progress on soy, leaving prices pressured and farm towns anxious. One industry leader called it a 5-alarm fire, and growers are scouting smaller markets while hoping for emergency aid. For now, it's less crop and awe, more sow and behold, a global buyer with leverage, and a seller searching for greener pastures. A high-voltage move in minerals. The administration is finalizing a deal to take a small, sub-10% equity stake in Lithium Americas, developer of Nevada's Thacker Pass, the largest known U.S. lithium resource. The stake would come by restructuring a roughly $2.3 billion federal loan, with both the company and Energy Department on board, pending approval from General Motors, a major investor that's already put in more than $600 million and locked up early output. Framed as a strategy to onshore critical supply chains and unplug dependence on China, the deal echoes recent government ownership positions in MP Materials and Intel. The goal is a lithium loop, from rock to battery. It's ore or never, securing EV ingredients before demand hits overdrive. And a power play that could shock your bill. Private equity is buying into the grid as AI's energy appetite surges. Blackstone has sought approvals for utility acquisitions in New Mexico and Texas, while a BlackRock subsidiary's proposed $6.2 billion buyout of Elite, parent of Minnesota Power, awaits a pivotal state vote. With data centers guzzling electrons, Wall Street sees steady current and recurrent profits. But consumer advocates warn the model could turn ratepayers into surge protectors for big tech's demand. BlackRock's CEO calls infrastructure a golden age. Critics fear it's gilded with higher monthly charges. The regulatory rulings ahead won't just meter money, they'll set the what and why of who pays to keep the lights and the bytes on. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.